All right, welcome everybody. This is the 1.2 homework for Algebra 1 Accelerated. Again, the idea behind these videos is that you attempt your homework. If you're having trouble, you take a look at the video to see if that can help you. Hopefully that clears up some problems, and then when we come to class, if there's any remaining problems that people still are struggling with after watching the video, we can answer those questions in class. Just a note, since this is the first time you're seeing my writing, my 2's tend to look a little bit like Z's. So my Z's I put a line through, and my 5's tend to look a little bit like my S's. So you'll notice the difference as we go through. You'll get used to my writing and we'll be good. Now, the primary purpose of 1.2 is really just to kind of get you a little order of operations, refresh. This should be fairly straightforward for all of you coming into this course, but just wanted to make sure and give you a little bit of practice. You'll notice that I really went out of my way to spend time on each step, whereas sometimes you could have combined steps. So let's dive in. So number 21, first thing I did was take care of my exponents. So my 4 squared became my 16, my 3 squared became my 9. I took care of my parentheses, so 9 minus 1 became 8. I took care of my division, moving left to right, so 64 divided by 16 became 4. Took care of my multiplication, my 3 times 8 became 24, and then finally I arrive at my answer. 22, same thing. I took care of my exponents, so my 2 squared became 4, my 3 squared became 9, my 5 squared became 25, my 4 squared became 16. Technically, I need to take care of my parentheses before I do 4 times 9. It really doesn't change my final result, but again, I'm trying to overemphasize the order of operations. So I took care of my 4 times 9 to get 36, and then end up with 27 from 36 minus 9. Now, just like those last ones, I took care of my exponents first. 3 cubed becomes 27, 2 cubed becomes 8, 2 squared becomes 4. I took care of my parentheses, my 8 plus 4 is 12. Took care of my bracket, 27 minus 12 is now 25. Pardon me, not 25, 15. And then 15 divided by 5 became 3. Simplified inside my parentheses, really probably could have taken care of this exponent at the same time, but again, trying to overemphasize what we're doing. So after I've taken care of my parentheses, I take care of my exponent. My multiplication of 2 times 7 gets me 14. Take care of my subtraction. 5 times 1/10 gets me 1/2. Or if you prefer, you could write it as the decimal. Now, the last couple problems ask you to evaluate, which is really just a fancy way of saying substitute in for the variable. So in 25, I substitute in my 3. Could have just used a times symbol here, but again, I'm trying to emphasize, especially as we start working with negative values, that this 3 is inside of parentheses. These parentheses on the second 3 are really unnecessary, but again, I'm just trying to emphasize my substitutions. Took care of my exponents, took care of my multiplication, added my 18 to 3, and then subtracted 2 for a final answer. Again, you're seeing that I'm using these parentheses to emphasize my substitution. Had this been a -2, the parentheses would be absolutely vital. Squared my 2, multiplied my 3 times 4, subtracted 2, subtracted 5. Made my substitutions for y, z, and x. Took care of my multiplication of 2 times 5, my subtraction, and then cubed 7. Substituted in for my parentheses, for my variables. Took care of 3 times 5, 5 times 2, 15 minus 10, cubed my 5. Now, when we're dealing with fractions, it's really like you're dealing with one set of values to simplify, a second set of values to simplify, and then you bring them together as the fraction. So I simplify my numerator as much as possible and my denominator as much as possible before I start my division. Cubed my 5, squared my 3, squared my 4. 4 times 125, 9 minus 5, and with my final value, 100. Made my substitutions to start number 30. Started multiplying in my numerator from left to right, so 4 times 3. You really could have done the 2 times 5 at the same time, but again, I'm trying to emphasize what we're doing. Squared the values in my denominator, 12 times 2, 24 times 5, 25 minus 9, and then I started simplifying by cutting values in half. There's no reason that you couldn't go straight to this final answer. I just took a little bit of time with it. And like we saw with that 1/2 earlier, if you had decided to write it as 7.5, that would have been fine too. All right, last couple. Initial step, make my substitutions. Again, using parentheses, trying to emphasize where I'm substituting in. Started simplifying, squared my 4, 5 minus 3, squared my 4, squared my 5, 3 times 16, 2 squared, subtracted 1 from 16, multiplied my 2 times 4, multiplied my 2 times 15, took care of the subtraction in my numerator, the subtraction in my denominator, final answer of 8. And finally, made my substitutions, again using parentheses to try and emphasize what I'm substituting. Had these been negative values, those parentheses become far more important, especially when we're doing things like using the exponents. Squared my 7, squared my 9, 7 minus 3, 7 plus 3, 49 minus 9, 4 squared, 10 squared, 3 times 40, 5 times 16, 120 plus 80, and I reduced to a final answer of 2. All right, hopefully that helped you with this homework assignment. Hopefully it was pretty straightforward in review from last year. When we come back on Thursday, I'll ask if anybody has any questions, and if there aren't any questions, we're going to move on and get to work in pretty much wrapping up Chapter 1. We're going to go through Chapter 1 very quickly. Have a good afternoon, and I will see you all soon.